welcome to our NUS Giving Experience Leadership Series. On behalf of the NUS Development Office, thank you all for joining today's event, NUS Giving Experience Leadership Series, a conversation on emotional resilience, finding emotional well-being through music. I am Mariel Esperanza, a final year student from the College of Design and Engineering, and I'm honored to be your MC for this afternoon. Today, we have two speakers who will be joining us. Professor Kat Agres, Assistant Professor from the NUS Yongsu To Conservatory of Music, and Miss Eileen Chai, NUS alumna and co-founder of 3AM Music Collective. The talk will be moderated by Associate Professor John Wong, Lin Jo Yen, and Yo Boon Kim Professor in Mental Health and Neuroscience, Senior Consultant Psychiatrist, Department of Psychological Medicine, NUS, and NUS Director, Mind Science Center. But first, we would like to invite you to lunch. I will be back shortly to share more about our speakers for today. Bon appetit! I hope that you have enjoyed the lunch that we prepared specially for you. Before we begin the event, can I please ask that you kindly switch your mobile phones and other electronic devices to silent mode. Now, allow me to invite Associate Professor John Wong to deliver his opening address. Professor Wong graduated from the National University of Singapore in 1987 and completed his specialist training in psychiatry at the National University Hospital, Institute of Mental Health, and Tan Tock Sek Hospital in 1998. He was awarded a Master of Medicine, Psychiatry in 1992 and exited from the Advanced Specialty Psychiatry Training Program in 1995. He is also a trained adolescent psychiatrist, having graduated with a Master of Science in Child and Adolescent Mental Health Merit from the University of London in 2002. His clinical interests include child and adolescent psychiatry, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder. Professor Wong, please.
Very good afternoon. Eddie from DVO, Amanda, who is working very closely with the DVO team to organize this afternoon's luncheon. Sorry, I was told that I could take off the mask. So thank you all for organizing, and more importantly, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen who have come to this luncheon. I'm privileged to be involved because we have two very important speakers whom we want to listen to. So first and foremost, I'm John. I'm a psychiatrist by training, but I'm also a medical educator, and I am a clinician who enjoys doing clinical research. And along the way, I was asked to do some leadership responsibility, so I contribute in many, many little corners that I can be of use. So very quickly, we have just a short intro. So DVO actually has kindly organized this afternoon's luncheon, and the NUS Mind Science Center supported the organization event with the kind participation of Professor Kat and Ms. Eileen. Just a quick intro to the NUS Mind Science Center, where how we got involved in this afternoon's luncheon organization is really the center is an academic research center under NUS, Yong Loo School of Medicine and Department of Psychological Medicine. And 4 years ago, it was also assigned or appointed as one of the Center of Excellence in the National University Health System. So what do we do? Actually, the whole idea of this is really to look at build an undefeated mind, which is a very nice caption. But more importantly is to really look at how we can research into non-drug evidence-based intervention and preventive programs across all ages. And we also develop and validate and provide consultancy to community groups to implement some of the evidence-based community intervention program to build resilient mind. And education is an important extension of the NUS primary mission. So we actually build capacity, and in the course of our work, we also have the opportunity to work with the ministry and some of the statutory board to provide them the statistic and the evidence for them to formulate some policy and new program. So The focus is actually, we don't work alone, we work with a multidisciplinary team, cross-discipline, and we look at the entire spectrum of life course approach, and in a way, that allows us to really focus on the population-based intervention program in the community. As you can see, as someone who is born, go into childhood, primary school, adolescent years, working adult and elderly, we have programs over the years that we developed that look at child developmental mental health and resilience, especially the first 10 years. This is a program that we are still working on, and we should come to the first major milestone by next year. We have developed a youth emotional wellness and fulfillment program. Workplace resilience and well-being is something that we work along with other colleagues, and is growing. Our heritage is really looking at how we can help elderly who are aging well and aging with dignity, as what Mrs. Wee said. And these are the 4 areas of research focus that we have embarked on. And the research we work on, essentially, as you have heard earlier on, is a lot on population, mental and social health initiative that is integrative and therapeutic. So we have 2 sections. One is on aging, mental well-being and dementia prevention. 2 is youth and emerging adult mental wellness, so that we can see how we can harness the human potential as our younger colleagues actually grow up into their career and their adulthood. Another area is really digital mental health, as you are aware, with the COVID. This is really a flourishing area. And last but not least is really with the focus on environmental health and effect on mental well-being. We all experienced the ups and downs during the circuit breaker. Actually, my apology, I joined you a bit late during the lunch because I'm on hospital call. So as usual, we do have many individuals who come to hospital because they are distressed, and as a result, they need to be hospitalized, and we have to provide them the care. So the environmental health and mental health is very important, especially we are investigating with NPARC on the urban nature exposure. All right. And of course, last but not least, it's really a lot of education and advocacy. These are the programs that we have. These are programs that we have that categorize into 2 groups: population-based research focus across the age, focus on the well and the at-risk population. Those who are acutely distressed, we see them in our different capacity in the National University Hospital. So for the NUS Mind Science Center, we actually focus on the intervention program development. We have an intervention program that is being developed and researched with NPARC on nature play garden for children with special needs in ADHD and autism. We have programs that cater to the youth, school-age children. Our colleague, Professor Kwa and his team at UTown actually developed a therapeutic rainforest program for the elderly as well as a university student. We also have 2 important sites in Alexandra Hospital where we do the mindfulness resilience training, as well as very interesting art and mind lab, experiential lab, which I will touch base very shortly. So this is a Mind Art Experiential Lab. It's a very innovative, reflective space. Mrs. Wee and many of our colleagues were there previously. It is a space for discovery of creative and integrative intervention through art, mindfulness, and transdisciplinary research. So music is one area besides movement art as well as visual art. We will be happy to invite you to this curation. We have a current curation on art, mindfulness, and the aging brain, and an embodied space exhibition. The details we will provide at the site of the luncheon. So today's topic is very interesting because we have 2 very distinguished colleagues and speakers, Professor Kat and Ms. Eileen, to look at how music as a very creative and very important media of the art, how does it impact on individuals like us. So a few years back, my senior colleague, Professor Kwa and Professor Maureen Sarkop, she was my professor in obstetric before she retired. They were the thought leadership, provided thought leadership to investigate into how choral singing among the senior choirs could impact positively on aging and cognition. Then, of course, the findings were published, and it was able to demonstrate the beneficial effect. And coming to the music today, I will not deal too much on it because Professor Kate will elaborate a lot more in detail. But I think what I really want to share to introduce the next session is really to use the understanding of how music has been used as an intervention, clinical intervention program, how it improves mood and self-expression and reduce stress in a clinical setting for those who may have a mental health condition, because it can help with communication and expression. It helps the individual to explore their thoughts and feelings, and of course, it will improve mood and concentration and develop coping skills. So that's really the essence of the therapeutic context. But what I really want to draw your attention is really this dimension of the calibration between happiness versus anxiety and sadness, and the calibration of the y-axis dimension of being energetic versus very calm. So it's not something that is good or bad. It is really a calibration of a mix of different elements of emotion that will end up certain emotional state that we are in. So of course, on the right side, where we are energetic, we are anxious and sad, depending whether we are energetic, where we become anxious and frantic, whereas we are a little bit more slowed down, we can experience a mood state of depression. Whereas when we are happy, of course, it's exuberance, and then this is a part that's contentment. So I guess at the end of the day, we really want to be on the left side of the axis, whether we are in a state of celebration or we are in a state of contentment. And a lot of time you find that, because I work with adolescents, I just saw one O-level student before I came this morning. She had a PSLE T-score of 228, which is pretty good because in Singapore, the PSLE T-score of 228, which is plus 10 is 238, minus 10 is 218. She actually is a good average student, but she was not happy because she was expecting 260. Without any reason, just expected. So actually, when you explore around that, it's really an issue of two things. Her sister had a PSLE T-score of 240, so she said she must beat her sister, but she didn't. Then on the other hand, she wanted to go to a certain school that only accept 260. So obviously, she didn't get her choice school. So became very angry, very disturbed, and very distressed, and very depressed. So I think that at the end of the day, we can experience all this mood, but I think the bottom line is really how one actually find ourselves in a contentment zone, or sometimes in the state of celebration. So mood state is very, very interesting. And of course, music, as we can hear later on, besides psychologically, it touches, emotionally it touches, but physically it also play a very important positive effect. So this is a part, I think just now over the dining table, we were just hearing from Professor Kate, how music can touch people. I just want to just bring to your attention, and many of us have listened to music, or we have played certain instrument, or we actually, sometimes some of us may even compose some. So the involvement of music in our life actually can be very wide range. But what is important that we all recognize that whether the music intensity, the timbre, the tone, the pitch, the rhythm, depending the combination, it could actually create a happy mood, exuberant mood, energetic mood versus a calm, a contentment stage. So this is something where I think in the research and science, I think it's really what we really want to find out more, how we can actually help individuals calibrate and contextualize the kind of music that could help them find a mood state that they are comfortable to be in. So as a medical doctor, I just want to end this part that while we understand the psychology and the social science of music, I think there is an important role for biological science that how music actually influence an individual and translate and manifest as a mood state. And one of the common route, obviously, is through the neurotransmitter. We are very familiar that there are three important neurotransmitters among the many that actually impact our mood state. So the most common, obviously, is really the serotonin. When the low serotonin, it causes us to feel sad. Dopamine is the reward. That's the reason why it's good to have some dopamine, but not too high. And of course, many of us have heard in the 1960s and 70s, the hippies used LSD, right? It's because they really boost up the dopamine a lot to the extent that they become psychotic and become problematic. Norepinephrine is the stress hormone, the fight or flight, but it is a very important emotional regulator. So what happened is that, well, we can see this structure, the chemical structure of the different neurotransmitter. Serotonin affects the mood, dopamine affects the pleasure, concentration of fight or flight, and the rest. You find that each of them play a role and how they interact. So when they interact, it's very interesting. We all are informed by the literature that when someone is depressed, the serotonin is low, dopamine is low. That's why the mood is low and they don't find any pleasurable experience. Anxiety is serotonin, the dopamine is low. Happiness, obviously, lots of serotonin. Schizophrenia, where a person may experience a lot of psychotic experience, then of course the dopamine is too high. But what we really want is really the situation to be in is to be filled with love and to experience love. That's where serotonin, the dopamine, and oxytocin. So we have a study on oxytocin for autistic children. We'll talk about it another time. But the fight or flight is something that not the best combination to be in all the time, but it's important when we're chased by a tiger, like what Professor Kate said. When you're chased by a tiger, you better run for your life. And then we need lots of this. Oops, sorry. From a biological investigation, many of us are aware, using depression as an example, for healthy individuals who are not depressed, you find that in the synapse, the nerve-to-nerve endings, there are enough neurotransmitter that is being released, that is being absorbed and resynthesized and released again. But more importantly, there is also a good number of receptors to capture the signal that's transmitted across. But in the synapse, the nerve space between two nerve endings, they find that the neurotransmitter is either much lower in quality or in quantity. Secondly, the receptor at the receiving end are also fewer in number or not functioning optimally. So you find that actually many of these are influenced through biochemical pathway and neural circuit pathway. So it's quite important that the understanding of music, how it impacts mood, involves psychology, involves social science, but also involves biological science. So this is a study that was done, reported recently. It's very clear that music and dopamine neurotransmitter are closely linked. In this study, was a very innovative design. They used a dopamine precursor, which is L-DOPA, and one of the antagonists, which is an antipsychotic drug we normally use locally, risperidone, and then a placebo. They find that the L-DOPA actually increase hedonic experience and music-related motivational response. Whereas using risperidone, they lead to a reduction of both. And clinically, we do see that some of our patients, for example, schizophrenic patients on this medicine, risperidone, while it controls their symptoms, many a times their mood also comes down quite dramatically. So this is a very useful illustration of how many of the mood states are influenced at the biochemical level. So without further ado, it is really my pleasure to hand over this section to our next two speakers. The MC will introduce them. I think what we really want to hear is really the making and listening to music. Obviously, it can be very restorative and very curative. But the question is how we actually can be engaged in a repertoire of sensory, cognitive, emotional, and social experience. So even gathering like this gives us a very positive emotional experience, although we have not heard any music until later on. Eileen will give us that emotional experience. So without further ado, I think we will look forward to hearing from Professor Kate on the science behind this and some of her research, interesting research she is doing, as well as Ms. Eileen Chia, who will really talk a lot about her personal journey and experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Wong, for the opening address. Our first speaker for today is Assistant Professor Kat Agres from the NUS Yong-Siew-To Conservatory of Music. Professor Agres received the bachelor's degree in cognitive psychology and cello performance from Carnegie Mellon University, and a PhD degree in psychology in cognitive science from Cornell University in 2013. She completed 2 postdoctoral research positions with the School of Electronic Engineering and Computer Science, Queen Mary University of London. She is currently an assistant professor at the NUS Yeongsu-do Conservatory of Music. She is also a research scientist and a principal investigator at the Music Cognition Group, Institute of High Performance Computing, which is housed within the Agency for Science, Technology, and Research. Professor Agras, please.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today, and thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Okay. Make sure. Oh. Okay. So, yes, I'm based at the Yeongsu-do Conservatory of Music just down the road. As mentioned, my background is music cognition. I use a variety of methods, including computational modeling, experimental psychology, and neuroscience, in order to investigate how the structure of music, the properties of music, influence our perception, cognition, and emotional responses. I also have a background in cello performance. As mentioned, I have a degree in music. And I've been lucky in the last few years to pursue something I feel very passionately about, which is developing music interventions and music-based technologies to support health and well-being. So I think if you ask the average person, what is the main role or function of music in society, they might say something about the importance of music for entertainment. Oh, it's very entertaining. We go to concerts. I like to be entertained. But obviously, music plays several roles in society. So I thought I would just ask you, what is the number one reason people listen to music? What's the main reason people report listening to music, do you think? Great. Anyone else? Relaxation. Anybody else? You're gonna sleep. Right, so I think you're all right. The number one reason people listen to music is to alter or enhance their mood in some way. It helps us to relax, it helps us to get pumped up, to go out. We use music in a variety of ways to mediate our emotion states. So it's no wonder then that music can be such a powerful tool to support our mental health. I'm going to briefly share some findings in this area. There's a lot to be said, just covering a few things. So first of all, music can support our mental health by helping decrease anxiety and depression. And that's not only self-reported levels of anxiety and depression, but also in terms of physiological responses by reducing heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, and things like this. Music, participating in music activities also helps foster social and emotional competencies and boosts our emotional resilience. So it makes us tougher. So for example, even those who are undergoing treatment for serious illnesses like cancer, music can really help our emotional resilience. Very important. Also, music-making activities improves self-esteem and self-confidence in youth, those who have been victims of abuse, and adults with mental health conditions. And of course, participating in group music activities such as drumming circles, choral singing, orchestra, these sorts of things, it promotes our social well-being, right? We feel bonded to the other people that we're making music with. We feel a sense of belonging, and this is really important, right? Music also, of course, in addition to supporting our mental well-being, can support our cognition and physical health. So as you know, the COVID pandemic taken a great toll on mental health. It's caused widespread challenges and difficulties, right, in terms of mental health and our social wellness. And it's no wonder, really, that so many people have turned to music as an emotional support tool during this difficult time. So recently, my colleagues and I surveyed music therapists from 22 countries around the world, including Singapore, about their experiences of conducting music therapy during COVID. So obviously, they faced a lot of challenges with all of the social distancing restrictions and whatnot, but there was a consensus that there's been a much greater need for music therapy, but unfortunately, they couldn't see as many patients as before. It's a very difficult conundrum. I wanted to share with you one of the quotes from the music therapist that we found to be very striking, and I think summed up a lot about what music can do for us, which is, music is always about making a connection, and connection is precisely what we tend to lose during this time of isolation and quarantine. So many people turn to online means of listening to and making music to help them get through the pandemic, right? What makes music so effective? Okay, there's a lot of reasons. I'll just share a few. So first of all, music is multimodal. Obviously, we use our ears, but we also see our colleagues making music. We touch our instrument. We move to music. And in part, because it's multimodal, it taps into many different cognitive resources, right? So it implicates our attentional resources. It uses our memory. It activates perception, action, feedback loops. It also makes us move. Music supports rhythmic entrainment. So this is where bodily responses are synchronized to an external cue, such as the beat of music. So things like, tapping your foot or clapping along to music, which I'm sure we'll be doing later when we hear Eileen's wonderful playing. And this kind of rhythmic entrainment has been shown to be beneficial for different kinds of patients. For example, helping Parkinson's patients walk more fluidly when they listen to music. Music is familiar and universal, and it promotes social cohesion. So actually, every culture that we know of has had music, interestingly. And finally, of course, music is very engaging and effective for emotion regulation. So when music is paired with something like prescribed physical, like PT, physical exercises, it increases our engagement, our motivation, and our adherence to that therapy. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about a couple of ongoing projects that I've been involved with, and the first is group drumming. So group drumming has been shown to be amazing. It increases our social and emotional resilience, improves our overall mental well-being, it facilitates a sense of belonging, facilitates new social interactions, and you meet new people who are in the drumming circle with you. Also, it facilitates a sense of acceptance and safety and care, very important. Also, group drumming is great because it's an activity that can be easily picked up even by those who have no background in music. Very simple, beat on a drum, right? But it's very fun. If you haven't tried it, highly recommend it. So my colleagues and I are very fortunate to have received funding recently to start a rather large-scale group drumming project. We'll be recruiting 300 low-income seniors around Singapore, and we aim to improve their quality of life, improve their sleep, decrease depression and anxiety, decrease social isolation. They'll be meeting every week for a period of 8 weeks, and increase their physical activity. And we'll test all of this, the efficacy of this program, through a randomized controlled trial, RCT. Our big goal is that we want to create an evidence-based program that can be scaled up on a national level to promote active aging and improve well-being among the seniors around Singapore. So stay tuned for the outcomes of this project. This is an example of a music-based intervention. Of course, there have been a lot of music interventions that have shown great efficacy and promise. Meanwhile, recently, as we all know, there have been many advances in machine learning and AI. Here in Singapore, I think you can't make it one day in your life without hearing about AI, right? Singapore is like the capital of AI, I think. So with that in mind, my colleagues and I have recently been rallying for work to be done at the intersection of music, computational technologies, and health. Most of us have been promoting this intersection from 3 different fields in particular. Excuse me, music, psychology, and neuroscience, music therapy, that is, clinically trained music therapists, and music information retrieval, which is the big music technology field. And what we are advocating for is more research to be done at this intersection of disciplines to create new technologies to support health and well-being for person-centered care. So in our paper, we discuss the current state of the art and also future directions. And I thought what I would do today to make this a little bit more tangible is to discuss a project that I've been working on for a couple of years that does lie at this intersection. It's a music-based BCI. That's a brain computing interface. So BCI is a bidirectional communication pathway between a wired brain and a device such as a computer. And by wired brain, I don't mean when you've had too much coffee and you feel wired. I mean one that has an EEG hooked up and it's measuring the brain's electrical activity, your brain activity in real time. So the idea here, see if I can use my pointer, is that actually, as alluded to by Prof. Wong, different musical attributes can lead to different physiological and neural responses, different emotional responses, right? Different tempo, different rhythm can lead to different emotional responses. So we leverage this in something called an automatic music generation system. This is a computational system that I've built with my team, very interdisciplinary team involving computer scientists and composers. And we've put together this computational system that's able to actually create affective, that is emotion-inducing music. The point of the system is to be able to create emotional responses in the listener. And what we can do with this system is embed it in a BCI device, a brain-computer interface. By doing this, we can create music that influences the emotion state of the listener in real time, but also reacts to them based on their brain state. So here's the idea. Here we have our music generation system. It's playing music and stimulating the mind of the listener. This is an EEG cap measuring their brain's electrical activity. Hopefully we're inducing emotion. We calibrate the system for the individual. And then in the full-blown system, same idea here. The automatic music generation system is influencing the emotion state of the listener, but then what they're trying to do is do something in their mind so that they can change the way the music sounds. In other words, their brain activity is directly driving the affective qualities of the music generation system. And that's why we use an automatic music generation system. We can't use pre-composed music because it has to respond in real time to the listener's brain state. So what they're trying to do, their task is to try to make the music sound happy or make the music sound sad. They're given a task, right, during this study. And what we're trying to see is the extent to which the participants are able to gain control of the music that they're hearing. They are trying to figure out what to do in their brain. How can I change my mind to change the affective qualities of the music? Just a little bit about the automatic music generation system. This is our, I call it version 1. Now we've revamped the system, but in this version we have several musical parameters that are mapped onto actually a very similar emotion space that has just been mentioned. It's called arousal valence space, where valence is the negativity or positivity of emotion, and arousal is the energy level, okay? I'm going to actually give an example of this. So here is our music generation system. You're going to see it traverse this emotion space starting in contentment, and you'll hear how the musical properties change as it's trying to compose music in different quadrants of this emotion space. Okay, let's listen. Towards neutral. Now we're increasing in arousal and decreasing in valence. So it's starting to sound angry. Towards excited and joyful. Pleasant. Neutral again. And we end up sad and melancholy. So hopefully you've heard how the music system is reflecting these different emotion states. In order to validate the system, we ran a listening study. And basically, what we found is that there is a very good correspondence between the arousal and valence settings of the system and how people rated the arousal and valence in the system. So basically, this shows that our music system was able to create affective music as we desired. So people were able to gain control of the music system. They were able to figure out how to change their brain in order to change the qualities of the music. And while they were doing, for example, the modulate towards happy task, make the music sound happy, we did see changes in participants' brain state as they did this activity. Namely, we saw decreases in beta band activity over the front part of their brain, and we see increases in gamma power over the right hemisphere. But really the takeaway message here is that people were able to change their brain state and change that music system that they were hearing in real time by self-inducing emotions, right? So this system, it's not only measuring and classifying the emotion state of the listener in real time, but it's providing listeners with a tool in order to mediate their emotion states, figure out how to control their own emotions using music. If you'd like to know the details, you can check out our paper, and I can show this again later. I'll just quickly mention that we have been working a lot on the system. We have a totally new, revamped classical automatic music generation system, and we also have a Mandopop version. I'm happy to play some examples at the end if there's time, but I think I'll skip this for now. Yeah, and I'll just go to the take-home messages, which is that the properties and that the affordances of music make it a really powerful tool to be integrated into therapeutic technologies for health and well-being. I briefly mentioned some of the projects that I've been working on and wanted to mention that we'll be using this music-based BCI system very soon with patients who have been diagnosed with depression. And in the coming years, we're also going to be testing this with stroke patients to support their emotional health as well as their motor control. Actually, they're going to be tapping along to the music. There we go. And now, do I take questions now? I'm very happy to take questions if there's time. Okay. Yes, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Agres, for the insightful presentation. Our second speaker is Ms. Eileen Chai. Ms. Chai is an NUS alumna and the co-founder of 3AM Music Collective. Her early career accomplishments were in sports, namely gymnastics, athletics, and springboard diving. Since her elite sporting days, she has been a sports coach, educator, international technical official, and a TEDx speaker. She was the first violinist in Singapore to compose and perform original songs by live looping on the violin, and has formed an electropop band called Zirconia. As a violinist, she has performed with Theo Irvine Hendrix, daughter of the legendary guitarist Jimi Hendrix, and has played at the opening ceremony of the Women's Tennis Association Finals at the Singapore Indoor Stadium. Ms. Chai, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Really very blessed and thankful that we are all here today, mask off, and we had a good lunch, and everybody here to talk about mental health using music. To start off, well, my part is to talk about the journey. So we have heard about the clinical aspect of it, research, science-based on mental health and music. So for my part, I'm actually going to talk about more of the journey, how I actually marry both mental health and music in my daily work. When I was 4 years old, my mom bought me a Superman costume, you know, the one with the cape flying behind. So one fine day, I said, well, I'm going to wear my Superman costume. Yes, I feel good about it. So I wore it. I walked up the staircase. I turned around. I feel superpower. I raised up my hands, bent my knees, and jumped. And third, I landed flat on the floor with a bloody nose. But because of that mischievous act, my mom decided, hey, no, Eileen is going to be in a safe environment. She's going to learn gymnastics so that she can do as much mischievous as she wants to be in a safe environment. So that was when I was 4 years old. When I turned 7 years old, along the way, I got, I guess, better in gymnastics, and I managed to represent Singapore in the Southeast Asian Games. At 9 years old, I started to train in China. Back then, the method of training was to imbue fear. To imbue fear was the way that has been successfully producing champions. So it worked, it really worked. But imbuing fear also means that as a child, you do not have choices to make, you do not have decisions to make. There was no adult at that point in time to help us, explain to us why was there fear, why was there conflicting emotions that we were experiencing as a child. At least for me, I internalized all these fear, unfortunately, and every time when I feel like, oh, I think I didn't do this right, oh, I feel like a failure, I will tell myself, as a child, I'm useless, and I will always bang my head against the wall so that I can numb the pain and fear. But as I grew as an adult, I left sports, and now I'm a music teacher, violin teacher, and performer. Throughout my adulthood, I never knew I had a mental health condition. It was only when I had suicidal thoughts that my husband then said, well, Eileen, you have to go and seek help. If you seek help, things will be better. And definitely, after I sought help, things got better, and I felt even happier than ever before. I felt like my quality of life improved, and my relationships with my loved one, especially my mom, my husband, especially the ones who are around you, the quality of life, relationships really tremendously improved. So that was back when I was 37 years old. Now, I'm not going to tell you how old am I, but that was a few years ago. So then I explained to my husband, hey, can you imagine the kind of feeling that I'm having now if many of us who might be having a mental health condition and they realize that by seeking help, it can improve their quality of life? Wouldn't that be wonderful? So my husband is called Ben, so Ben and I decided that, hey, we are going to start the music social cause. We are going to bring this love, this beautiful message across the world to everybody. So we started this music social cause called 3 a.m. Music Collective. So what is 3 a.m. Music Collective? 3 a.m. Music Collective is about collaborating with musicians of different ethnicities, different age group, to come together to produce music of different genres. The music, when you hear the music, is supposed to give you hope, to show empathy to people with troubled minds. The things that I do now, I have one mission, and that is to give through music, giving through music. So by producing all this music, it has to help people, right? It can't just be, just make music for fun. I mean, but with the research that has been done by Prof. Kat as well as Prof. Wong, I think we all know that music can help a lot of people. So we thought, okay, we need to come together to plan how we're going to bring 3M Music Collective to the people. The things that we have thought through was based on my experience as well as research done. When I was going through the mental health condition, I thought, when I was seeking help was still a little bit difficult because I never thought that I could see myself as having a mental health condition. Eileen Chai having a mental health condition, that's impossible. Eileen Chai used to be like the darling of Singapore, doing gymnastics. Oh, and then she went to track and field. Oh, and then she went to springboard diving. Wow, how could she ever have a mental health condition? But I did. So it was not easy for me to accept that I have a mental health condition. As I was seeking help with my psychiatrist, it was still difficult for me to acknowledge that seeing a doctor could help. Prof. Wong, I know you are doing a lot of help with a lot of people. And that was then, okay? So I believe in your work. So it was still difficult for me to understand how could a doctor actually rewire the brain. But now I know it's because of the synapses, right? So it was difficult for me to accept, difficult for me to acknowledge. But one thing for sure is that I knew that I wanted to recover. Recover from whatever that I was suffering from. I know I was suffering because I would always have this constant pain in my head. I was always saying hurtful words to the people around me. I never knew why, and I cannot control myself. I didn't understand. So we realized the outcome that we would like to see from 3M Music Collective is when they listen to the music of 3M Music Collective, the outcome would be that to encourage the person, if you have a mental health condition, if you suspect that you have a mental health condition, first step is to accept that we have a mental health condition and we go and seek help. Second is to acknowledge that when seeking help, the doctor can help us recover. It might take 10 years, but so be it, but it will happen. The third outcome is to take action. Because if I didn't take action at that point in time, if anyone who has a mental health condition and doesn't take action, it's going to be difficult to recover. So the 3 A's, accept, acknowledge, and take action, were the 3 outcomes that we wanted to see for the people who are listening to 3M Music Collective music. Then the next question is, so what will the outcome? How are we going to deliver it to the masses? So we decided storytelling is the best. So we storytell it through music. We have since produced 10 songs. And these 10 songs run through like a story. The story describes the social, emotional, psychological journey of a person suffering from a mental health condition. For example, depression and anxiety. And each of these songs is depicted by the sound of the violin. So the violin represents the person who is actually going through a mental health condition. But we're also aware that, oh, by the way, if you want to listen to the music, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, as well as YouTube channel. So if you like, you can listen to it. But we're also mindful that this may be a story of 10 songs, but each of these songs has to stand on its own as well. Why? Because, for example, if let's say I'm a lover of heavy metal music, out of the 10 songs, there is a heavy metal music. So if I love heavy metal music, I go Spotify and I'll listen to heavy metal music. Chang, 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 oh, chang, chang, chang. If 3M Music Collective music is not within the Spotify list of heavy metal music, we'll lose this crowd. But we're also mindful that perhaps we need to do a research, or has it been done before, that metal music can help people? But, well, that's another story, another time. So, if I were to be listening to a heavy metal music, we were also aware that if somebody listens to it, they must still feel inspired. So how we did it was to use the power of words, to use the power of lyrics. In every 3 AM Music Collective song, the chorus will always sing out inspirational words. For example, the darkness of these demons, the silver lining will cast it away. So imagine, at 3 AM, you feel very sad, you feel very frustrated. When you listen to this music, you realize, wow, I'm not the only one. I will see the light at the end of the tunnel, and tomorrow will be a good day again because I will use my silver lining to cast it away. So the music itself has to stand on its own. Moving forward from 3M Music Collective, when I was still having my psychiatric sessions with my psychiatrist, I did a lot of research on my own. One of the things that I found out, well, together with my psychiatrist, we found out that my adverse childhood experiences, in short, ACE, my ACE score was pretty high, well, relatively high. Why I would say relatively high? Because my husband, when he did this tally, he got 0. Mine has a digit on it, so relatively high. So what exactly is this ACE score? ACE score is a tally of abuse, neglect, as well as other hallmarks of rough childhood. The rougher your childhood, the higher your ACE score. That means this reflects that in your later life, we might have some health problems, for example, depression, anxiety, or even heart risk. So this is what I found out about myself. Then I realized, for children should lead a happy life. Whatever that the children experience as a child, it can tremendously influence how the brain restructures, as well as influence on the behavioral patterns. So a child's foundation is so important, because with a good, strong foundation for a child, in later life, they can fulfill their potential. In later life, they will lead productive lives. Besides 3M Music Collective, the 3M Music Collective project was started in 2018. Now it's 2022. Since then, I actually created 4 other initiatives, all related to how we can use music to engage people. The 4 other initiatives are, first of all, Music Sparkle SG, Strings for Kindness, 3M Music Collective, The Violin Travels, as well as Silver Ever Bright. And all these initiatives comes under the umbrella of Chai 360 Music Ecosystem. In short, when a child comes for music lesson at Music Sparkle SG, not only do they learn about technicalities of music, but as a child, they will learn about what is love, so that they feel a sense of security. They will also learn about how to communicate better, so that they can articulate their feelings, which is very important, because we will never want to have a child to keep their feelings inside. Thirdly is how to cope with challenges, aka emotional resilience. And when the child grows a little bit older, they can join Strings for Kindness. Strings for Kindness, it's a string ensemble for kids where they come together, play music to bring kindness to the community. When they can do that, the children feels happy, and the people who are listening feels happy too. So it works both ways. And as a child grows a little bit older, when they reach emerging adulthood, like 18 years old, they can join 3M Music Collective, where they can be empowered and start to collaborate with different musicians to come up with different genres of music. And with that, the music, they can start to give through music. And when they reach a little bit older, 30, 40 years old, when they come to a lifetime that they might meet a midlife crisis, then they realize, oh, I haven't done music for a long time. No problem. They can join the Violin Travels, where they can collaborate again with musicians, coming together to talk about music. They feel happy, and they can actually create music that is wonderful for everybody to listen to. And the last one, when we grow a little bit older, when we reach our senior age group, we can all come together to come to a program called Silver Ever Bright. Silver Ever Bright endeavors to give engagement, empowerment, as well as to involve the seniors, so that they can all come together to do movement exercises through music as well as storytelling. So all these comes under the umbrella of Chai 360 Music Ecosystem, where we use music to engage people. So we endeavor to empower, uplift the spirits of the children, the teenagers, the adults, as well as the seniors, together to bring joy, laughter, happiness, love to the people around the world. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chai, for your heartfelt sharing. Please remain on stage for our dialogue. Our moderator for today's dialogue is Professor Wong. May I also invite Professor Agers to join us, please?
Thank you very much. Can I ask how much time do we have? Because some of the guests may need to leave. 10 minutes. Okay, good. So 10 minutes, and also we have a little surprise because we'll ask Miss Eileen to do a special for you. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention and your participation at this luncheon. I'd like to thank Professor Kate and Miss Eileen for a very interesting presentation. So before I start a session, maybe just now Professor Kate did ask whether our audience has any questions to her presentation, or even Miss Eileen. Yes, please. You want the mic?
Thank you very much, both the speakers and Professor Wong, for arranging this. I'm an ardent music lover, and I haven't done as much with it as you both have. And I totally agree with your comments on music and what it does for us and what it means for humanity. As you said, Professor Agres, there's no culture that has not got music. So your program on BCI is very, very interesting. But I always like to be a skeptic. And my question is, what you achieve with this program, the interaction between a human, the human's mood, and the machine that produces the music as a result of this. Isn't that what a person playing a musical instrument is trying to do anyway? And if so, I mean, you may not do it well, but when you're playing the piano or singing, that's exactly what you're trying to do. You're expressing your emotions through a musical form, whether by voice or... And yes, I can understand that some people have not had the benefits of learning a musical instrument, but everyone has had the benefit of being able to sing. So since you also play the cello, can you just tell me, there's nothing like expressing the music through a musical instrument yourself. Why do you need a machine?
Yes, thank you for the question. That is, I suppose, a very nice analogy between the system and just playing an instrument in the first place, if your aim is to communicate emotion through music. The specific goal of our system, however, is to use neurofeedback, not only the music system, but neurofeedback, in order to help someone figure out what to do in their mind to change their emotion state. So it's not just about creating the music. That's sort of a means to an end. And the end, the goal, is to help the user figure out what to do in their brain. How can I change my mind so that I can be really in control of my oscillatory activity, so I can be in control of my emotion states? So it's using the music system and neurofeedback as tools to try to figure out how to change what's going on up here. So it's really a tool for figuring out how to change one's emotional states through this neurofeedback program. So the goal's a little bit different.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm beginning to understand. Thank you. So what you're telling me is another question that I have for all three, including Professor Wong. I'm just trying to work out the dividing line between using music for everyone, because all of us have mental problems. And you can't just say someone has a mental illness. It's a fine spectrum. All of us have bad moods. All of us may want to feel better about something. So this feedback loop that you're talking about, it's continuum, isn't it? And my question is to Eileen too. So rather than wait until someone is really in a bad mental state, wouldn't it be ideal if everyone could use music from the beginning as a child, not in a competitive way, as I think Eileen has made us realize. Music can be a source of tension and depression and competition and everything else, like if it's taught badly. But if you had an ideal society where music from the beginning was used to communicate, to express positive emotions socially, to interact both with yourself and to recognize your emotional state, then you wouldn't need all this. I mean, I know that is ideal, but I'm just asking. I've always been impressed, for example, when I went to Bali, because you know, the gamelan is not just played by professionals, everyone participates. And if you had a society where everyone made music rather than listened to it, it was an active rather than a passive, would not that be a good thing from the mental health point of view?
Maybe I'll speak about this. Well, because of the AC score, previously my company name was called Teach Your Life for Life. Teach Your Life for Life was about sharing life lessons learned through music. But along the way, as I realized that it was because of my childhood, and I started to look at my students, they're all kids, then I realized how much of impact as a teacher and using music has on the kids. That's why then along the way, I changed Teach Your Life for Life to Music Sparkle SG. So Music Sparkle SG is meant to deal with what you've just mentioned, that we do an early intervention rather than, oh, we have a mental health condition, then we go and see a doctor. So we try to do it as early as possible. Of course, I'm not trying, at least on my part, because of the work that I'm doing, I'm not trying to steal the work from parents. Parents, I think, are still the main caregivers of the kids, right? But on my part, I will make sure that the child receives love, because love in the future, the kid slowly will develop, oh, there is a sense of security. I know when something happens, I know that I can go back to my parents. I know that I have a teacher there who is always there for me, so there's a sense of security. I always get them to articulate their feelings. Like, what do you do today in school? Oh, so much of stress, now PSLE is coming. Some of them even cry during lesson time. So instead of having the lesson doing too much of technical attitudes, I get them to play something more jovial so that we can use the feedback of the music to change their emotions. So I get them to articulate their feelings. Then the last thing that I will do is to teach them about emotional resilience. Like if this piece gets a little bit difficult to play, it's okay. We just do it a few more times. I'll play with them together. We can do it together as a team. So we actually do, in a way, Music Sparkle as we do an early intervention with the kids so that in later life there is a less likelihood of them suffering from mental health condition.
Thanks, Ms. Eileen. So thank you very much, Dr. Gaming, our senior colleague. Can I just maybe frame it that I think the point brought up was a very pertinent point. That is, how can we promote music literacy, not just among children, adult, or the seniors, but importantly in a family context, especially when children are growing up, and even in the community, because I think if we look at social emotional learning needs of a child and even a growing up adult, that is a very important element of life skills that will help us. And music, obviously, as a medium, or even the singing, the making of music, or the playing of instrument, definitely have a definite role. It's just that I think the investigation of science is another discussion, but from the understanding from social science, definitely it has proven to be very important and effective in many contexts. So I think from a society perspective, for many of our audience here, how will you propose that we can really be a bit more focused to enhance or promote this aspect of music literacy? Yes, Catherine.
I think it's a fantastic point. Just from a personal perspective, oh my goodness, the number of ways that music has helped me, everything from cognitive development to just sort of social awareness to being driven to reach goals. I think personally that music should be integrated into the curricula. Right now in Singapore, it's something that you can sign up to do outside of the curriculum. But students aren't, it's not offered as part of the curriculum. So from my perspective, I think it would be fantastic to offer this to everyone during school hours, right? Because we know that it has so many benefits, not just socially, but also on cognition and overall well-being. So I think that's where I would start. But yeah, it's a great point, I totally agree.
Thanks. Eileen?
I totally agree with Prof. Kat as well. Definitely, I was with the Ministry of Education before, so I know it's not, well, rewind a bit. So I was with the Ministry of Education before. I know as a teacher, there's already a lot of workload for the teachers actually, but if we can actually start working on teaching the teachers to train how to work on using music to intervene, to have an early intervention on how they actually use the music to produce resilient kids. I think that's definitely very important. So definitely I agree with what Prof. Kat is saying, but we will probably need to go further into training the trainers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So I guess to wrap up this conversation is really our dear friend, Miss Eileen Chai, mentioned about the 3 a.m. collective, music collective. I think it will be useful after the end of the luncheon. Please go and find out what does 3 a.m. stand for. I learned a lot from her last week about the 3 A's. And the 3 a.m. has got a medical, clinical significance because in depression, early morning awakening is an important symptom to recognize. So 3 a.m. is also a time that reminds us that there is a clinical implication. So I think to round up this part about how do we promote music literacy among healthy growing, typically growing children, young family, even for adult, I think it's something that worth a lot more discussion. And of course, there are many ways, many routes to lead to Rome, but I think for those who are interested in this area of work, for our family, for our children, or even for our workplace, I think there are always opportunity to link up after this. So I was given a hand signal to stop this, but I will stop. But I just want to seed a question for Professor Kate later on, is that she has shared a very important and interesting presentation on the computerized illustration of how the music moved from contentment, anger, towards happiness, towards sadness, right? So just wondering whether the sequence, was it part of the experimentation design, or is it something that you think there is a logic to it?
Okay, so this was an example of how the automatic music generation can flexibly compose music in real time. And so normally the system would be composing music based on, again, the brain state of the listener. So basically the music is meant to reflect the emotion state of the user. So it depends on what's going on in their brain. If they're feeling sad, then the music composed will sound sad. If they have to figure out how to make the music sound happier. What can I do in my mind to get to a happier state so that the music sounds happier? Right, using the neurofeedback. So the trajectory will completely depend on the emotional trajectory of the listener using the system. Yeah. If I may just very briefly say, this was an extremely short introduction into this very fascinating topic of music for health. If anyone would like to sit down over a cup of tea and have further discussion about music for health, please reach out to me. I would love to talk with you. If you're interested in supporting this research, that would be fantastic. Kat Agris at NUS is my email. So thanks. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Ms. Eileen, any last comment before we invite you to the stage?
Well, actually, I would like to say, I know there's a lot of people who love what we are doing, I guess. Well, in actual fact, I guess what everyone here would know of somebody who has probably a mental health condition. Even probably some of us will have some stresses in our lives, right? So whatever that we do now is to help people. And everything that we do, we definitely need some form of resources. So if some of the things that we have mentioned or shared touches your heart, we definitely need all your support. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your attention. You are a wonderful audience and participants. Now it's my time to hand over to Ms. Eileen Chia. She would like to do a piece for you. Thank you. Please, welcome.
Okay, thank you. The piece that I'm going to play for you is called Everything is Possible. Everything is Possible was composed for the band that I mentioned just now, the Violin Travels. So the Violin Travels idea was mooted actually more than 10 years ago when I wanted to cycle around the world, like bring my violin around the world and just put down my bike. I see people, yes, I put down my bike and I take out my violin and start playing with music, right? You will not need to know how to play music, but you know how to clap, right? So you just clap along and then we play music together. Yeah, so that is to bring joy to the people around. So that was what I wanted to do, but things get we get a lot of work that we need to do with our career choices and all that. So now, 10 years down the road, I decided, yes, time to start doing it, and the borders are opening up, so the Violin Travels need to start traveling. So here is Everything is Possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chai, for the beautiful piece. May I please ask everyone to join me in thanking our speakers, Professor Agres, Ms. Chai, and our moderator, Professor Wong. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have come to the end of today's event. We hope that you found the talk interesting and informative. Should you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to approach any of the DVO staff for more information. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.